let's do the brass tacks, I guess, of the Bobby Kennedy thing. So Kennedy basically was like a shoe-in for the 1968 Democratic candidacy. And in some ways, I want to say he was a lot more radical on a lot of things than JFK was. But JFK seemed like more concerned with pussy than anything.
Yeah, his agenda was pretty much America first.
Yeah.
He was.
I'm not saying I completely agree with everything he wanted to do, but
yeah, we don't have to heroicize the guy. He had some dumb policies and stuff, but I mean,
he was a libtard at the end of the day.
Sure, but he was hard on Israel.
Yeah.
I
mean, that was he really was. He literally said America first.
Yeah.
He was like, he was going on like this. What not even like constitutional conservatives have given up on now is saying, yeah, we shouldn't be we have to go for nuclear disarmament because otherwise we're just going to end up policing the world. We're gonna get involved in all these foreign entanglements that we don't want to get involved in and all that. And,
also you can understand it was
he's the one that's was the head of the Justice Department that went after them on Dimona and actually sent agents down there to test the flora and fauna and found 97% enriched uranium, which had been stolen from the United States. So
I was going to say, wasn't that stolen uranium?
Yeah, they took it from Apollo, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And he knew, and he had been investigating his brother's death.
Yeah. He had to know. When like the fact that like as soon as LBJ came in, like the first things he went 180 on was all related to Israel.
Right. Nothing with Cuba or Vietnam or any of that. That all stayed the same. It was the Israeli policy that changed.
Yeah.
Right.
He gave us the USS Liberty and the Gulf of Tonkin.
Yeah.
Had both Kennedys, especially Robert Kennedy, been prosecuting the mob.
Right.
And when I say the mob, you have to understand how much of that mob.
Yes, the real mob. Yeah, it's funny. Like when Americans think of the mob, you think of like the fucking. You think of da 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 da. But
the kind that's in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, I don't know who makes that. Who is that? Yeah,
that's Michael Collins.
Hollywood's owned by Italians.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Italians control.
But yeah, Meyer Lansky has his fingers all over Permindex. And fucking all the, I mean, like, dude, he was the mob. He literally is organized crime.
The nuclear material that Israel stole. One prominent mobster, Mickey Cohen, Jewish mobster, had actually raised $1 million for the Irgun terrorists who were the ones running the illegal weapons, and which included uranium, to Israel from the United States. And so $1 million at that time is an enormous amount of money. It's still crazy. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Organized crime within the United States is helping to finance the international organized crime that was illegally sending arms to the Israelis to kill Palestinians. And Mickey Cohen was a buddy of Russell Parsons, who was a mafia lawyer that RFK had been investigating.
Right.
And because no, that's not all. That's not all. This is a mob lawyer that's friends with Mickey Cohen that RFK's investigating, who ended up being the lawyer for Sirhan.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah. How did no one like raise their eyebrows or like, oh, this guy is this well-regarded fucking lawyer because is fucking just decides out of the fucking blue to support this guy that shot
I'm gonna be Sirhan, this random like Palestinian Christian guy that's in debt to the mob and works at a mob owned ranch, and Frank Donaramas gives him this job. I'm just gonna buddy up with this. The reason they didn't raise an eyebrow is there was no media coverage of it. This is all pre-internet. It was very hard to get.
Hyper reality was very not far outside of reality.
No, it was just like CBS and ABC.
4 channels.
There was nothing there, and I mean they covered a little bit in LA papers and stuff, and there were whistleblowers, and they got ignored,
and they all got attacked too.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually a reporter for CBS witnessed Thane Caesar shooting RFK.
Right.
And it's just whatever, okay. He's like, that's who killed RFK, by the way. Would you say?
Yeah, Thane Eugene Caesar.
That CBS employee, his name was Donald Schulman, and he solved security.
Where's the bell?
There's an A in man.
Yeah.
It's SCHULMAN. Schulman. Whatever.
Yeah, but it's one N, so it's probably.
Well, regardless of where he rings the bell or not, he witnessed Thane shooting RFK.
Sure.
That's it right there. Somebody saw him do it.
Well, Scott accepted the California Democratic Party nomination. And he said, it was right on the eve, by the way. Also, notably,
Chicago, and let's win there, right?
Yeah. But notably, also, it was in the anniversary of the 6-Day War, 1 year to the day. But more importantly, as you said before, though, it was on the eve of the Chicago thing. And so his last words to the audience were, we're going to go to Chicago and hopefully win there. And they head into the kitchen, and there was a shitload of people in there, including one Sirhan, and he was ushered through by a security guard. What was the name of the company?
Yeah, but it's 8 security. And Thane had only been working there a day.
Right.
And he had a load of shit where he claimed that he'd worked security at that hotel before, but he hadn't. And basically everything
he was a John Alessio goon.
Yeah.
Right. I believe that the San Francisco bank, some bank from San Francisco, which was mobbed up, was like the mob piggy bank, as I understand it. And they owned that, like the Ace Guard Service was actually like a wholly owned subsidiary of this San Francisco mob bank, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, Alessio. Right. But he was a Jersey mobster. There's several Jersey mobsters and New York mobsters that had talked about contract killing on RFK. Carmine Galante was one of them. He was in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary in Pennsylvania at the time, but he was discussing it with none other than Jimmy Hoffa. Now we all know why Jimmy Hoffa wants to kill RFK.
He put him in jail.
Embarrassed him. Yep, and RFK went after Giancana and the rest of them. I thought only little girls would giggle, And a lot of these guys got popped off after the JFK assassination. And Roselli actually, after RFK had been killed and finally the Zapruder film gets released, once they did that, then Roselli was going to testify. And so they had him chopped up and put in barrels in Florida for Trafficante. So, a lot of these people get disappeared. They get Epstein. But he knew. He knew about the JFK plot.
Oh, yeah.
And there were people announcing they were going to kill him, too. But the goal was to kill JFK so they could get to RFK. You got to take the big man out first. Because he's the president.
I was going to say, I imagine if they took out RFK while JFK was in office, it would be short order that the people who are responsible would be brought to justice.
Right. They needed Johnson in there too. There's a lot of things they needed to do.
Yeah.
And then later with Nixon, he's another syndicate president.
Yes, absolutely.
Nixon was mobbed up worse than Pelosi.
Right. Yeah. And also, what's it called? Nixon was like boys with the fucking Henry Kissinger and all the
Kissinger doctrine. Ugh. People should read that.
Is he still
alive? You've ever seen the Kissinger doctrine on Africa and how they have all these resources and they need to be depopulated? Oh,
sounds like Bill Gates.
The guy's a monster. Yeah, they're buddies. And he's still alive.
But go figure.
Some of the witnesses and stuff on RFK. Then we're running out of time. So we've got William Harper, who's a criminologist. You got Carl Becker, who's the maitre d'. You actually got in between RFK and Sirhan. There's Dwayne Wolfer, he's the police examiner, and he chemical tested his jacket and determined that there were 2 guns. He ends up getting harassed later. Thomas Noguchi, who's the LA County coroner, and then he got harassed. Herbert McDonald, and he was the forensic expert, and he also determined there were 2 guns. And then, of course, there's William Bailey, who's the FBI agent who witnessed and examined the extra bullet holes. Now, here's the kicker. In June of 1969, right? So this is exactly a year later, basically. The DA, whose name was Evel Younger, promised that there's going to be tons of new information and that the police have in their possession, and it's all going to be made available. And then nothing was ever released. And then we find out way later, it's like 1975, the LA Supreme Court probes the case, and it was revealed that the LAPD destroyed the door panels and the ceiling on June 27th, 1969, just weeks after Younger's promise. So he promises the police have all this information, and the reason they're getting rid of the door panels and ceiling is that's where the extra bullets are. Yeah. Because Sirhan's got an eight-shot revolver that he shoots 13 times in front of RFK, hitting him 3 times in the back.
Yeah.
Right? So those bullets curved around. And
talk about magic bullet.
Yeah. And they're like, well, maybe he wasn't facing them. No, he was facing them, according to all the witnesses. And the burn mark through his jacket and the burn mark under his right ear are basically point blank range.
Yeah.
And St. Caesar did that and lied about his gun.
Right.
He lied and said, oh, no, I didn't have that gun that day. I had this other gun. But he had an H&R 22 caliber revolver, if anybody knows about guns. But he lied about selling it. He said, oh, I sold that gun 3 months ago. But he actually ended up selling it 3 months after the killing, not before.
Right.
And they have the receipt. And I put pictures of that in Decades of Deception. And then they actually found the gun. It had been thrown in a lake in Arkansas.
Yeah.
There's Wald Emerson too. He was a financial backer for the research into this, and he was threatened over the phone. William Harper, the criminologist I spoke of earlier, had his car shot by 2 men that were following, start firing guns at his car. The wife of the attorney, Godfrey Isaac, mysteriously dies, was killed, and then Theodore Chirac, who was a witness to the shooting and had made interviews on radio shows, he got threatened at gunpoint. His assistant, Betty Dreyer, was stabbed, and her husband, of course, Ivan Dreyer, wrote a front-page article in the Free Press titled "Who Killed RFK?" And you should go read that or pull that up for your listeners. It's on my website, too. It says all the things we're talking about. And so they stabbed his wife. And they had their son witness their truck squealing out of their subdivision at 3 a.m, or whatever, because the son was at a neighbor's house spending the night or whatever, and saw it from across the way. Good thing he wasn't there. It could have been like the killing of the judge in the Epstein case, where they killed their son and they killed her husband, or they injured her husband. So then you got Grant Cooper was Sirhan's lawyer, who was the guy
mob lawyer.
He represented 4 of Johnny Roselli's goons during the Sirhan trial. So at the same time, Roselli ends up getting murdered too. But he got convicted as an accessory of illegal possession of grand jury testimony. So they're like, give us the goods.
I like this anecdote.
It's just all his lawyers are mobbed up. And when you look at how Ace Security is tied to the Mafia Bank and John Alessio,
right,
and how that Sirhan's working at the Corona breeding farms for Frank Donaramas, who's also in the notebook, and you've got Hoffa and these guys talking about contract killings. Also Robert Houghton, who was the chief detective of the LAPD, was like saying Sirhan fit the pattern of a hired killer. Right. So he was there with a gun, doped out of his mind. They're like, just wait here in this kitchen. Right.
Yeah.
Because they put the paper in his back pocket. So if he does get shot, that'll be there. And they'll see the motive was because of Israel or whatever. I mean, it's always screaming in pain as they beat you. And you can see this a lot with Democrats today, where whatever they accuse you of, they're guilty of themselves. Like they tried to impeach President Trump over a phone call to Ukraine. And then you've got Joe Biden on a phone call
bragging to the CFR.
not only bragging to the CFR about what he did. We have the the full tapes from the anti-corruption agency in Ukraine of his threats. I see this is all the stuff that I had put out on YouTube, which is why I don't exist there anymore. But
yeah,
the CFR clip, a lot of people seen, and I'm glad. But you should really listen to the full conversations that Biden's having with Poroshenko, and